Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. We're going to do it all by ourselves this week. There is so much going on. Remember, we love taking your questions, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. Now, we're going to get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. In other exciting news, the documentary Carville, Winning is Everything Stupid, is now streaming on Max. Get updates and some great behind-the-scenes content by following James on Twitter @JamesCarville and on his new TikTok @RealJamesCarville. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at Politicon.com. Tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Please check out the links to our sponsors, Laundry Sauce, Beam, and Naked Wands. We thank you for supporting these sponsors because it really helps make this podcast happen. Hey, James, it's only been 3 weeks since the Trump election, but there are those who say, well, it may not be as bad as we feared. They are self-deluding. It may be worse than they feared. One, people, the appointments. I can't believe some were celebrating when the sexual predator, Matt Gaetz, had to withdraw as Attorney General. Then Trump appoints former Florida AG Pam Bondi, who, while not personally sleazy like Gaetz, may be even worse. In 2014, as Florida's Attorney General, she dropped a suit against the fraudulent Trump University scam while receiving a big donation from Trump, which was actually an illegal contribution. A New York Times report revealed how incredibly close she was to so many special interest lobbyists. Imagine, James, an election denier as Attorney General. Now we have the HA Secretary, RFK Jr., saying what really propelled him, what really turned him into the great student was his heroin addiction. So now, let's go out and have our HHS secretary telling all those young people. I'll tell my 7-year-old grandchild, you get on heroin, you're going to be a great, great student. And then there's the policy. He says he's going to slap on a huge tariff on Mexico, Canada, and China on day one. I don't know if he's bluffing or not, but if he's going to, it'd be a disaster, driving grocery prices through the roof, shades of Smoot-Hawley. And then Tom Homan, the thuggish deportation czar, threatened any local officials who don't capitulate. Of course, mass deportation also would devastate the economy. And finally, corruption. There are already charges that one of his top advisors, Boris the Great, is shaking down nominees for cash contributions if they want to get appointed. They are fudging on ethics rules. They won't disclose donors to their inaugural plans. The next few years, the bar is open. This administration is going to make Teapot Dome look like a neighborhood picnic. And James, would you please tell those Cassandras who are saying, well, it's not as terrible as we thought it was going to be, that it's more terrible?
It's unimaginably terrible. So let's take the tariffs. People argue the policy of it. And everybody, pretty unanimously, it's bad policy. Mm-hmm. No, look, that is not, their intent in doing this is not policy. It's shakedown.
Right.
Exemptions. A big surprise. They found out that the biggest Republican donors last time he did tariffs were exempt from tariffs. Mm-hmm. So this is, I'm going to break your windows or you pay me. So he puts it out, and it's the mob. Either you pay me, or bad things are going to happen to your business, and bad things are going to happen to your children. So that's what they are. Now, if Boris Epstein, of course he was selling positions. The only way that he will get into trouble if he didn't give the Trump family their cut. In other words, if somebody paid him $1 million to be deputy secretary of whatever, as long as the Trumps got $333,000, they're fine. But you better be giving them their 1/3 cut, because if you don't, you're in trouble, dude. You're in trouble. There's not anything wrong with selling a position, but not cutting the right people in on a deal, there's everything wrong with that. So we'll see. But if he's paying the freight, if he's giving them the cut, he'll be fine.
And James, we're seeing this 3 weeks after the election, almost 2 months before he takes office. You can imagine, but you're absolutely right. That's what the tariffs are all about. They're all about a shakedown and exemptions.
Of course they are.
And the question is, what do you do about it? I think they're two different, but not necessarily contradictory approaches the serious opposition should take. One, as you know, I think there really needs to be an aggressive, robust, well-funded resistance countering their dubious legal actions, many of which I think will probably be patently illegal, attacking their policy. They lied about remember? Project 2025 came up, and Trump said, what is Project 2025? No, nothing about it. Well, guess what? His administration is being populated by Project 2025 people and policies. And also to check on the conspiracies and lies that the very, very big right-wing media tells, which then passes on to Vance and Trump. And I think, and to look at the pervasive corruption you were just talking about. The old order isn't up to this challenge. We need a new order. And also, Jonathan Last, in the always interesting Bulwark, had a good piece. He said, freak out a little bit less on the bad things Trump is doing, like the tariffs, and challenge him to actually do it. Usually there's a lot of bullshit. He makes claims and then isn't able to follow through, placates his base and blames the deep state for it. But let's actually say, all right, you're going to do it. Let's watch it. Let's follow it.
Well, again, my view is everything is a shakedown. There is nothing legit. Nothing. And so the tariffs, if he gets enough money, he'll forget about it. He doesn't mind deporting people because, when the agriculture people come up, that's going to put a kind of stop to that, slow it down a good bit.
Or the construction people.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be a little harder than he thinks. But for enough money, you can write exemptions. Exemptions are the current currency of the United States government. You have a terrible policy, but you have exemptions. If you pay, you get the exemption. I mean, the corruption is everything. There's nothing beyond the corruption, right? There's no policy whose intent is not at its core corruption. And when you understand that, I think you understand everything.
Yeah.
And I really do.
That's who they are. And James, they didn't hide it. They didn't use the term corruption, but they told you exactly what they were going to be doing.
No, of course they did. Of course they did. And the one thing that he can say is, I told you I was going to do all this, and you voted for me. And I can't wait till when the impending disaster happens, and you know what's going to happen. They're going to go to a diner in, small town Wisconsin, and people are going to say, well, I voted for change. I didn't vote for this. What? You know what's going to happen. I didn't know that. I thought he was going to, drain the swamp. It was so difficult for people like you and I, and most of the people, 85% of people who listen to this podcast, we know what it is. And we're powerless, totally powerless. And by the way, we'll get into this during the conversation, but the resistance is going to have trouble raising money. These fundraisers are burnt. They're really pissed now. And the damage that the 2024 campaign has done, the damage that this decade has done to the Democratic brand is almost unfathomable. Almost unfathomable.
Boy, I hope those funders wise up, because they're going to get hurt too. But talk about the damage the 24 campaign did, and I think you're not. I think you place some of that blame on the Harris High Command.
First of all, remember I love that scene in the movie The Graduate where he says, Benjamin, come, one word, son, one word, plastics.
Right.
Right.
One
word, audit. So I have people that are contacting me to run for DNC chair. I promise you I'm not going to get in the middle of that. But anybody, and I don't have a vote or I don't have an opinion, no one cares, but I would say the policy number one is we're going to audit everything. We're going to audit the campaign. We're going to audit Future Forward. We're going to audit the DNC. So people can know. But I'm telling you, without complete transparency, the campaign, we think, raised $1.5 billion. Okay? We know that Future Forward, the last we saw was $900 million, so we can assume that they got to $1 billion before election. That's $2.5 freaking billion. Do you have any idea where that money went? Does anybody have any idea where that money went? I mean, I have some places I started looking, all right? And it's all, Albert, I promise you this. The amount of money and the amount of lobbyists that were involved in this campaign is staggering. It's staggering.
Well, talk more about that, James, because that's not what the Democrats are supposed to be.
So we had this discussion that we thought when Harris was asked the money question, would you have done anything different than Biden? I think you did too, but I'll let you speak for yourself. Now, she just froze. I want to be loyal to Biden. I just can't bring myself to criticize him, which was a very bad answer, but an understandably human answer. So then, Stephanie Cutter, and she goes on Pod Save America. No, that was by design. The reason she gave didn't even make any sense. All right, so Stephanie Cutter owns a firm called Precision Strategies, who Jen O'Malley Dillon used to work for. That much we know, all right? And we think we know that they got a lot of the buy. I don't know. But there has to be an audit. And one of the really ironclad rules, I think, for Democratic politics is if you're a lobbyist, you can't work on a campaign. And now, my prescription to that is always get the campaign out of Washington. Well, they were in Wilmington, and they really couldn't. A lot of this goes back to one central character, and that's Joe Biden.
Yes.
I'm sorry. He stands over this like anything else. But they were all lobbyists. They were all compromised. They all had different things they were trying to do. And, and they made some poor decisions. And so now we said, well, the governments all over the world fell because of inflation, and it's what I call political Presbyterianism. The whole election was preordained. They say their polling never had them ahead. I don't know. I know there are a lot of public polling that had them ahead at one time or another. And I don't think it was ordained. I think as long as the strategy was that you were going to get more of the same and nothing new, it probably was ordained. But there was nothing to say that we had to run on totally on what Biden did in Biden's record. We had plenty of chances to differentiate ourselves, and we chose not to.
Yeah, Stephanie Cutter's an old friend. I like her a lot. When I read a report that her firm lobbied or supported retaining carried interest, James, there may not be a more outrageous tax break. It goes to the rich private equity and hedge fund executives. That's something the Democratic Party just ought to simply oppose. If they lose some campaign contributions, so what? I mean, this is not a left-wing thing. Bob Rubin, if you will, a lion of Wall Street, says it's a totally indefensible tax cut. But you get in that mindset. And I did listen to the Pod Save America podcast with the top Harris campaign operatives. But it kind of was. It was preordained. It wasn't convincing. And on the elephant in the room, the huge Joe Biden drag, not only did she give a terrible answer on The View, I went out reporting less than I have in the past, but 3 or 4 days in Pennsylvania, 3 or 4 days in North Carolina. The number of people who said, I don't want any more Biden. These were not all Republicans. There were some Democrats. And as you and I have discussed, I thought at that convention when she was being introduced, she could have praised the Biden record on infrastructure, on chips and other things, but said, we have some differences, as he did with Barack Obama. And I will have a different policy on the cost of living, price gouging, etc. I will close that border on day one until they pass a bipartisan bill. That's when she should have done it. And they froze. You're right. They just froze.
So do me a favor, because not everybody understands. Explain what carried interest is.
Carried interest is a provision that allows these hedge fund and private equity guys that instead of paying the regular tax on what is just basically earned income, they get to take a special, much lower capital gains tax. It's a provision written, just for that kind of business. And it is, I don't know what the cost is, I forgot. It's not humongous, but it's not infinitesimal. And it goes only to the ultra rich. And as I say, if you talk to people like Bob Rubin, they'll say of course it's indefensible. And Democrats shouldn't be lobbying for stuff like that. Maybe I sound naive, but it just...
I don't think that you being naive, but as I understand it, a lot of Senate Democrats all do it because there's a lot of money that comes in.
There's gold in them hills, right?
Right. But it again, it just goes to my point. And I know a lot of people that are lobbyists, a lot of very close friends of mine, as you do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are perform a service, they're good people, they're good family people, they're honest people, they pay their taxes, but they have conflicts. If according to legal ethics, now people break them all the time. And lawyers are not allowed to have conflicts. They're not supposed to. It's against the rules. And it's pretty hard and fast. And you say, well, I'm an honest person. I can represent both sides. Maybe. I don't believe you. Or I'm skeptical. I'll say that. I'm skeptical. And the symbiotic relationship between people that make money off of the government and people who run campaigns, there should be a hard line between the two.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, there are plenty of people that can do politics that don't have clients for money. There's nothing wrong. I want to be very clear. A lot of people I know are government relations experts, and they have perfect right to do that. A lot of them honestly pay all their taxes, but they shouldn't be giving advice to political campaigns.
Well,
I think it's just...
I think your point's well taken. Lobbying is a First Amendment right. I mean, you can redress the government, but commingling the interest there with politics, a political campaign, is not a First Amendment right. And I think, you're absolutely right. And on the Biden issue, the answer that they gave was she was just loyal to Joe Biden. As Speaker Pelosi said, what's really loyal is winning the election. And there's no doubt that supposed loyalty hurt her. Would she have won if she had done what you and I talked about? I don't know, but she'd have had a better chance.
What about loyalty to the people that gave you $1.5 billion?
Yeah.
Okay, what about loyalty to the people that walked precincts? Hearing the stories about, people going door to door in Pennsylvania. What about loyalty to these people? What about loyalty to all the people who volunteered, state parties? What about loyalty to the members of Congress who are infinitely better off in a majority than a minority? But what loyalty are we talking about? Okay, let's use the word loyalty. All right, what loyalty is, of course, Speaker Pelosi is exactly right. If you look at the title of the recent documentary about me, there's nothing that is legal that you don't do to win. But it's the ultimate test of loyalty. Are you loyal to Joe Biden, or are you loyal to the people in the Democratic Party? Let's talk about loyalty, because it's a word that gets shoved around a lot. And my question is, loyal to who? Who the fuck are you loyal to? And hey, look, Jen O'Malley Dillon, Joe Biden made her. She was in the White House, and I don't, from everything that I don't know, but I'm sure I've met her, but I never heard anybody. She ran everything. All right. She ran the communications, she ran the field, she ran the entire thing. She was pretty good at amassing power. But when they say that, who are you loyal to? That's the question. It's not a question of loyalty, which is a good way to put something. It's a great excuse to have. But when you think about it, it makes utterly no sense. None. And shit, I didn't, people, donors will say, well, I didn't give Joe Biden money, I gave you money. And there were a lot of them that wouldn't give Biden money that gave money once she got in. And they thought they were getting something different.
Well, Nancy Pelosi was one of the great heroes of this campaign. They didn't win it, but it wasn't because of her. She tried to get him out earlier. She tried to get them to distance themselves. And I gather there, a number of them, starting with the current president, are very bitter. They're wrong. She's the best the Democratic Party has.
By far. And when I hear people critical of Nancy Pelosi, automatically they're suspect to me.
Yeah.
Automatically suspect.
Okay, we'll be back. I'm afraid it's all be a weekly saga about the corruption of the Trump administration, but that's what we're here for, right, James?
Get fresh and stay fresh with laundry sauce. Ooh, man, I'll tell you, I like clothes that smell good. And this makes your clothes smell so good. If you think about it, your clothes, your covered area of your body is much more than the exposed area. If that smells good, your whole body's going to smell good.
This podcast is sponsored by Laundry Sauce, because Laundry Sauce created the world's best-smelling laundry detergent in simple-to-use, high-performance pods. It has transformed doing laundry into a luxurious and exciting experience, so you don't have to dread laundry day anymore. So what's the secret sauce behind Laundry Sauce? They partnered with one of the top fragrance houses in the world, the same team behind many of your favorite designer scents. Now that we can pick from scents like Australian sandalwood, Egyptian rose, Siberian pine, laundry day will never smell the same again. They've transformed the boring task of doing laundry into a luxurious sensory experience. Now it's no longer a dreaded chore. I think you ought to really look at that Australian sandalwood. If you do, you're going to look fresh and enjoying a distinguished, relaxing scent. While we're recording, apparently our houses have what the kids would call a vibe. To fill you in, Laundry Sauce was started back in 2021 by a team who were bored by the mundane, chemically smelling scents in the detergent aisle. So they sought out the world's #1 fragrance house to bring beautiful, complex aromas made from high-quality natural ingredients and put them in a powerful stain-fighting laundry pod. They've earned some of the funniest, most authentic reviews you will ever read. Jay said, and I quote, "If this laundry soap was food, it could only be described as delicious." Jay, I think James and I agree, although I'm not sure we're going to go the food route. Laundry Sauce even makes scent boosters, dryer sheets, dryer balls, fabric softeners, and candles too. Plus, if you're not happy, send Laundry Sauce back for a full refund. No questions asked. So now is the time to elevate your laundry ritual with Laundry Sauce. Head to laundrysauce.com/warroom and use the promo code WARROOM at checkout for 15% off. That's the best offer you'll find, but you must use our code WARROOM for that 15% off. One last time, that's laundrysauce.com/warroom, promo code WARROOM for 15% off. You also can find the link in our show notes.
I'm sure we are, and of course unfortunately, is what we're going to be talking about a lot. I hate to do that to our listeners, but I mean, this is where we are. And again, what I'm worried about the resistance is, and maybe we can think about doing this project. What is the resistance? Now, it looks like somebody was telling me, you've followed this a lot closer than I do. I think we talked about it. The House is going to be pretty damn close by the time it's all the chips fall when they get ready to fall.
Absolutely, James. I mean, it probably will end up 220 to 215. Republicans, and they lose 3 seats on January 20. Matt Gaetz will never take his seat, and they lose that Florida congressman who's going to be the NSC advisor, and they lose Elise Stefanik. So on January the 21st, the margin will be 217 to 215. Let's watch them deal with that.
And so do they need a majority of the House or a majority of those voting to elect a speaker?
They need a majority of those voting.
A majority of those voting. Okay.
Right. So he'll be elected speaker. Look, Mike Johnson's job is determined by Donald Trump. If Donald Trump snaps his fingers, Mike Johnson's gone. If Donald Trump supports him, Mike Johnson stays. They don't have an alternative. So, but how well he can run that House with a 1-vote margin to start with, and then a 3-vote margin or 2 or 3 vote margin later, man. Mike Johnson ain't any Nancy Pelosi.
Oh God, man! To say the least, Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. I mean, Joe, for sure. Whether we ever, kind of critical of President Biden. I mean, it's the totality of it. It's just such a shame that his whole legacy is going to be wrapped up in this. It really is.
It is a shame because he was a good president.
It really was.
He got a lot done, and he just, I think, what I think was a problem? I think the success in the 2022 election was a problem. I think that Biden and people around him took that as a validation of his performance, when in fact it was the Democrats' success, such as it was about Dobbs. It wasn't about Biden. But
why do you think Dobbs didn't carry over?
Good question.
I don't know. I mean, when somebody goes back, I mean, we have some, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame game. Okay, I'm all for that. But also, if we think about the mistakes that they made, why didn't Dobbs carry over? Why didn't a superior organization, at least I thought was a superior organization, why didn't it carry over? Why didn't the number of surrogates we had matter?
Right.
I mean, everything that you traditionally did in a campaign, it seemed to me that the Democrats had more of it and did more of it than they did. And at least on the surface, none of it mattered.
Well, and James, it also, on that point, it is rather clear that the late-breaking votes, such as they were, went more to Trump than to Harris. We thought Harris had a great close and Trump had a terrible close. But the votes went to Trump.
Have you seen that Blueprint survey?
I haven't.
Okay. There's I think it's Blueprint. They did a survey of the late breaking voters. Mm-hmm. And I hate to be like a one-trick pony here. Like 75% thought that Harris wanted to defund the police. 75%. All of the hangover from the early part of this decade stuck with us. And now we see that Walmart is just totally abandoning DEI. And no one says anything.
Right.
And the stuff was, the things they were doing were frankly ridiculous. And the hangover from the whole identity politics is haunting us till this day. Till this day, it haunts us. Now, do I think we'll be beyond it by 2028? Yes. And does everybody says, oh, no, that was a big mistake. We don't talk about that anymore. You're right. But the damage that this whole thing did to the brand was really hard. And these people went, and I don't know how good they are. I think they're pretty good. They're a Democratic-leaning firm. And they actually interviewed the late breakers.
Yeah.
And they were overwhelmingly influenced by this identity nonsense.
But James, I think it hurt her more than most others because that 2000, they did that devastating commercial on things she said in 2019.
Right. And
in contrast, the Democrats actually picked up a couple House seats. Yeah, they lost the Senate, but boy, those Senate races were in really, really red states. And
close. We won some.
Yeah.
I mean, we won a lot. I think 4 seats that Trump won.
Yeah. All right, we're going to be back with this week after week after week. 4 more years, James. It's going to be hard, but we're going to make it, right? We hope.
We hope.
If you're a fan of my podcast partner, Mr. Carville, I have a movie for you. James is the star of the fabulous, funny, and prophetic documentary called Carville, Winning is Everything, Stupid, directed by Matt Gaetz. In it, you can see James warning the Democrats through the entire 2024 election cycle about the risk of losing the election to Donald Trump. And you can check the film streaming on Max now. The film also delves into James's marriage to Republican strategist Mary Madeline, offering an inside look at how they navigate their bipartisan life. If you're looking for an unfiltered take on the state of politics, the Carville-Madeline dynamic, and what Carville warned us would eventually cause the Democrats to lose this year, you definitely want to check out it by streaming on Max. How important is to get that message out, James?
Well, I don't know. I got to tell you, I know I'm the subject of it, but it's a very, very, very well-made movie. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But that movie, just by way of reference, is a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's pretty hard to accomplish in a country, but you got 1,000 different opinions about everything. So if you're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, you're probably worth a look on Max.
Yeah, I would agree. And for updates and some great behind-the-scenes content, follow James on Twitter @JamesCarville and on his new TikTok @RealJamesCarville. You won't want to miss it.
Get the great sleep you need with Beam. Woo, man, I tell you, good night's sleep. Like I say, you want every tool in a toolbox. This is a really good tool. And on top of that, it really tastes good. I mean, particularly this time of year, I can't imagine a better holiday gift than to send somebody this. I really can't. And you send it to them, and every night they're going to enjoy it, and they're going to remember you as opposed to a pair of socks they're going to throw away or whatever you give people.
After the election, and we stayed up a lot those final days, James, but getting sleep has been a challenge. But it's more important than ever to get the rest we need because there is a lot of work to do. We all know good sleep is the foundation of mental and physical health. When you sleep well, you can perform at your best, mentally and physically. Proper sleep can also increase focus, boost energy, and improve your mood. We need that these days. That's why we're so excited to talk about Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed, healthy hot cocoa for sleep that has single-handedly changed our sleep for the better. This bedtime essential is delicious, decadent, and guilt-free, thanks to only 15 calories and 0 grams of sugar per serving. You'll love flavors like, now listen to this, sea salt caramel, brownie batter, vanilla chai, and the Beam Dream Powder original flavor, cinnamon cocoa. That is a favorite. It's the perfect complement to the holidays. But for a limited time, they have white chocolate peppermint, wow, and gingerbread too. You can say with confidence, better sleep has never tasted better. Dream is tested for high-quality efficacy and formulated to ease your body into rest, supporting all 4 stages of the sleep cycle to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of magnesium, reishi, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Beam Dream is easy to add to your nighttime routine. Just mix Dream into hot water or milk, froth, and enjoy before bed. And now for the best part. Beam's Black Friday sale is now live. This is Beam's biggest sale ever. Get up to 50% off when you visit shopbeam.com/warroom and use the code warroom at checkout. You've been hearing us rave about Dream. This is your chance to try it for its lowest price ever. So head over to shopbeam.com/warroom and enter the code warroom. That's shopbeam.com/warroom and use code warroom for up to 50% off. You also can find the link in our show notes. Hey, now for the outrage of the week. One Trump appointment that we haven't mentioned is Dr. Marty Makary to head the Food and Drug Administration. At first glance, this seems like a relatively good appointment, even if his prediction record on COVID was mixed. He's a respected surgeon who's made major contributions at Hopkins Medical Center and its Bloomberg School of Public Health. One thing to watch, whether he, with Trump's instructions, cracks down on the use and distribution of abortion medications, the pill. The FDA can do that. That's at the top of the agenda of anti-abortion activists who say, hey, we're due something. We supported you. But I tell you what really got me about Dr. Makary. He was on Fox TV earlier this year, suggested that Joe Biden was suffering from dementia. You know, few people have raised more concerns about Biden's, being too old to run than we have, James. But we didn't charge he had any specific condition because we don't know. We aren't qualified to do that. Neither is Dr. Makary, a friend, an eminently distinguished neurologist, much more qualified in such matters than Dr. Makary. A few years ago told me that it was malpractice to diagnose anyone with specificity just seeing them on television. But if the good doctor wants to violate this norm, I'd like to hear what he says about any cognitive decline he sees in Donald Trump.
It's what they call the Goldwater rule.
Yeah, the psychiatrist in 1964, right?
Whatever. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
If you call a physician and you say, "I got this, just come in," it sounds like it might be this, but let's look at it. All right, and before somebody is actually diagnosed with dementia, unfortunately, or in some cases, more fortunately, I've had family members that go through this. It's a pretty exhaustive process.
It is.
They just don't say you have dementia. There's all kinds of different function tests you take. Mine is, and I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to start right now. But there is so much misinformation that we actually believe, or that the public assumes. We assume that crime is increasing around the country. It is actually decreasing in record numbers. We assume that there is disorder and chaos at the border. Fair to say that there's not any at all now. The border is a pretty freaking orderly place now. All right? We assume that the military, because of the good economy and the Republicans say woke policy, that people, and also the real number one challenge is because you have fewer veterans having children. It used to be that 40% of the people in the military's parents are in the military. Maybe I'm wrong on the statistic, but it was a lot of, they're actually exceeding their goals. Thanks to our friend Walter Pincus. I've said it last week. It's worthy repeating. We all thought, look, California is a great place. It's very innovative, but because of the kind of dumb zoning laws and because of tax breaks in other states, that people were moving out of California. They were going to Arizona. They were going to Texas. They were going to Florida. Actually, California is the second fastest growing state in the country. I say this because the founding fathers, you hear people say, an informed, honorable public, made up of really good citizens are going to make wise choices more than they're going to make bad choices. Okay, I think Lincoln said, that the idea of democracy is more than half the people are right more than half the time. What really bothers me, is that the informed people are not really that informed. And I consider myself a pretty informed person. In other words, I talk to people like you, and we do every day. We have this glorious phone Zoom call every Sunday. Everybody has read everything current, and we don't know. And so if we don't know, how does the lady with 3 kids at the Walmart know?
Right.
How we buy you? And I don't know if there's an answer to this, but there's something that is wrong with the information delivery system in this country. There just is, and we're making decisions, and it's not just stupid people. It's not just people in diners in the South or the Midwest that are spout off. Is the earth really round? Okay, it's not that shit. It's people, informed people, we're falling short somewhere. And I don't know where, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't blame the New York Times. I don't blame anything, but we're just not getting information. We're just not.
Well, it's a problem. I have to do something about it. And we're not only not getting information, we're getting, as you say, so much misinformation.
Right. And even we get it.
Has to be checked.
But right. It's just got to be something. There are only so many Walter Pinkuses that they got.
Any of you out there who have any suggestions, we welcome them, okay? Mm-hmm. All right. We'll be back next week to take up this and lots of other topics.
All right.
Hey, James, now more than ever, how great, how necessary is a glass of wine, especially when you can find the perfect bottle at the perfect price online with Naked Wines.
Well, I had my glass of wine was up as I do this show. But I will say this. I know a little bit about wine. I'm hardly a master sommelier or something, but I know where they come from. I know vintages fairly well. And the stuff that they pick, you're not going to do any better. I tell people that go in a restaurant, and if you're trying to figure out, unless you really know or you're going there a specific bottle, they have something. I always like to ask the sommelier. He says, look, I'm looking for something in a X price range. I like a kind of assertive red. What do you got? That guy is going to get you, or her, it's often not, it's not a guy. They're going to get you a really good bottle of wine because you're leaning on their expertise. The people that run this company know wine. And you can't do what they do. You can't go to these vineyards and buy a lot of it and get a discount. This stuff, for anybody that really knows that they like wine, but that you don't know what kind of value you're getting all the time, and you have to be pretty knowledgeable to do that. I can assure you, personally, I know the wines that they send. You're going to get well-made wines at an excellent price point. And it would take you a lot of time to be able to replicate what they do. And this is something, hey, look, if you're a master sommelier and you have access and you do everything yourself, well, maybe you'll do something different. But if you're anything short of that, which I guarantee you are, these are well-selected, extremely well-priced wines.
Well, yeah, it is a subscription service that directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers. They do that. So you can get award-winning wine delivered straight to your door with our code WARROOM. You can get 6 bottles for just $39.99. Now, let me just repeat that. 6 bottles for $39.99, less than $7 a bottle. That's not cheap wine. That's not the crummy wine you get at a 7-Eleven. It's really good wine because of what Naked Wines is able to do. You know, we don't usually like going to a store and being paralyzed by wine options. I have one place I like, but usually it's the luck of the draw. Now we get exactly what we want, know what we're getting, quality wines, and you can ditch road trips to the store. Plus, Naked Wines helps you take any meal to the next level with a perfect bottle for any occasion. You know, thanks to Naked Wines, you can share an amazing steak dinner paired with a 2022 Matt Parrish Reserve Napa Valley Red. It'll be one to remember. And then you already start picking out the selection for the holidays as we are. There are so many great options. And the best part, every bottle is a passion project from an independent winemaker. So you are literally making an independent winemaker's dream come true. Naked Wine believes that the great wine is an experience, and they're all about helping you connect with your friends, family, and community over a shared bottle of wine. Turn off the noise of the outside world, yes, and uncork a bottle to celebrate the little joys in life. We love that Naked Wines has been around for over 15 years and funds over 90 independent winemakers around the world. And don't forget, you can pause or cancel your subscription at any time. So even with a trip coming up, you can still enjoy Naked Wines before or after that much-needed vacation. So now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Head to nakedwines.com/warroom and put in our code WARROOM for both the code and passwords for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. That's nakedwines.com/warroom and the code WARROOM for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99. You also can find the link in our show notes.
So I'll make a point about Naked Wine. I mean, for 15 years, it's a subscription service. So if you're very cynical, like I can be sometimes, you say, yeah, they're going to give you something less than good. Actually, it doesn't behoove them because they would lose a prescription. They have a subscription service has every reason in the world to select the very best wine it can at the very best price because just to be crass about it, they want to keep you on the hook.
They don't keep subscriptions if it's crummy stuff.
Correct.
Right.
So if you're passing through town and you go to a wine store, I'm not saying a lot of ethical people in a wine business.
Yeah.
They got a slow-moving wine, they'll push that to you.
Yeah.
So if you don't go back, they don't care. But here, every month, they're incentivized, and they do a good job of picking the wines out. I'm telling you, this shit is good.
All right, we got lots of listener questions. People are really, really ginned up after this election. James, let's start with this one because we got several like this. Drake in Indianapolis, Indiana. How do the Democrats reclaim masculinity going forward?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I knew.
You got a week? Okay. First of all, Indianapolis is a great town. Really is. Every time I go there,
yeah.
More impressed. They got a great downtown.
I used to think of it as kind of a second-rate place. It really has changed over the last 20 years. Yeah.
It really has. But, okay. So in March, I got to say this. I tried to draw attention to it. Of course, I drew some fire. I knew I would. Our culture, Democratic campaign culture, is just too feminine. It just is. We should. We run a lot. We accentuate the fact that we're groundbreaking. We should be. But it comes across as too judgmental. And males have a difficult time. Anybody that teaches in higher ed, and I've talked to people that teach at Ivy League schools. I've talked to people that teach at service academies. I've taught at private schools and public schools. And females have become more the aggressive gender, which is fine. I have no problem with that. I have 2 daughters.
Well, not only that, but you like being married above yourself, so we don't have any problem with that.
I don't have a problem with it. But males do feel put upon, and they feel talked down to. And they feel like a lot of, you hear this male toxicity or whatever shit that is. That's a favorite saying of coastal people. And they don't even understand the damage that they do to the brand. And by the way, the problem is particularly acute with, I hate the term, I don't say males of color, I say non-white males. It's really acute. And we gotta start thinking about, and I don't totally blame Harris. I think she tried to address it with Walz. I think that her people were kind of aware of it, but it took us a good while to dig ourselves in this hole. And it's going to take us some effort to dig ourselves out of this hole. But I completely understand it.
Yeah.
I totally understand it.
Good question, Drake. Deborah in Cummington, Massachusetts says, should we make Pennsylvania the first primary state? It seems like it would give us better candidates. No, Deborah, the order of primary states really is not. I mean, South Carolina was supposed to be a great success for black voters this time. It wasn't. I think Iowa sort of disqualified itself, but they were so screwed up. But I don't think it matters as much. I would shorten it, and I still sort of like, for nostalgia reasons, I like the idea of having New Hampshire first. But I don't think it matters a great deal.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I understand, and I have great nostalgia for New Hampshire too. But honestly, nostalgia's got very little to do with it. But I don't see that. And if you wanted to change it, assume that you could, it would be a hell of a big effort to accomplish what? I mean, the way that we have our primary system, it had nothing to do with the colossal disaster of 2024. And generally, Democrats have done a pretty good job under the system of picking, the better general election campaign. Now, I'm going to make one, I call it a prediction. I think it's a certainty. The number one Democratic message of 2028 is going to be winnability. Winnability is going to trump policy. You can have a policy, and I will bet anybody any amount of money that you have a policy that 84% of the Democrats like. And the other candidate has a policy that 70% of Democrats like. But if they think the 84% will hurt their chances in the general, they're going to go with the 70% candidate every time.
Well, if we all become Pelosi Democrats, I think they're going to do a lot better. James, I'm picking up on the candidates. Victoria in Orlando, Florida, says we ran 2 women against Trump and both lost. Let's be honest with ourselves. This is a problem. True?
No. I mean, it certainly would lead you to see that. But I don't, the Democratic Party can't and won't and should not back off of having women candidates. But you got to run. A female candidate can run and attract male voters with policy positions, cultural positions, the way they present themselves. Man, I can't. It's just every time I hate to just be a one-trick pony, but every time we go back to identity politics, this was just a disaster on every front for the Democratic Party, and it's an ongoing damage to the party brand. And it certainly, identity politics certainly demeaned, by and large, males much more than anything else. So
right.
we're just living with the hangover of this, and you cannot cure the hangover unless you realize that you got one. It was just massively stupid. But I don't.
This is turning
look
around.
At female, I mean, Tammy Baldwin. She won in Wisconsin. Look at Alyssa
Slotkin, one in
Jackie
Michigan.
Rosen.
And I mean, those are three of the most contested Senate races in the country, and all women won.
And all in states that Trump carried, by the way.
Yeah.
And all against male opponents.
Right.
I'm just, for a lot of reasons, but the principal reason being just strategic, that's not our problem.
Yeah.
And even if it was a problem, we couldn't back off of it. Because that's the nature of being a Democrat. But I'm glad that she asked that question because, when people ask a controversial question, we should not get mad at the question. We should say, this question provoked you to think on your feet. This question provoked me to think on my feet.
Well,
right?
James, I got another one that is thoughtful. Reed in Jacksonville, North Carolina, says the best soundbite for the Democratic opposition party, quote, the Republicans have control of the presidency, Senate, House, and the Supreme Court. Everything, they control everything. So anything that goes wrong or they fail is entirely their fault. Absolutely yes. It goes back to that Jonathan Last column I cited. And Trump is a master at failing and blaming others. Don't let him get away with it.
So, of course, he's right. But we have to understand something. And this is hard to do in American politics. We are an opposition party. We don't even have a center of the opposition yet. But the opposition is going to have some time getting funded because of the catastrophe, the amount of money that was spent in Democratic politics in 2024 with a not very impressive result. But what we have to do is understand the difference between being an opposition party and what I would call, for lack of a better term, a minor governing party. And that's going to require some adaptability, some creative thinking, and some unity among the opposition. And, I just take 40 seconds here to say, I think the party is disoriented, is a little confused, a little dazed. Lincoln said about Rosecrans after Chickamauga, he looked like a duck that was hit on the head. We got to have some leadership here, and we got to have a rallying cry because I just detect more confusion and disorientation than I should be when the threat is this big.
Okay, let's look ahead then. Jim in Locust Grove, Virginia, asked you. He agrees. He says new leadership is needed in the DNC. Can you give me any great candidates?
I'll just leave it at this, several potential candidates talk to me. And the first thing we need, I think, is an audit. I don't know how the DNC figures into being an opposition party. I'm certainly a little bit interested to see what different people have to say about it. It's generally not been a very big factor in Democratic politics, although I will say, and we did accentuate some of the better state party people that we had, and I think they do count for something. I think the DNC has been an underutilized potential asset. I don't know how major a role it can play, but it can certainly play a more significant role. And I'm going to pay a little bit of attention to what the people running for DNC chair have to say.
Well, I hope so. I'm coloring me skeptical, but
I
hope
have
I'm
the
wrong.
same skepticism that you do, but a skeptic is also not a denier.
Right.
A skeptic is open to evidence.
Catherine in Berkeley, California.
Oh, boy. There we go. Somebody finally
We're not exactly grassroots, but she says, where is the organized resistance? We must unite to build a communication system, call MAGA out loudly every day. She likes your suggestion of holding a convention or midterm gathering, but we have to get started on this. Catherine, you are so right. I mean, we're going to have a guest on pretty soon, Stephen Levitsky, who's an expert in authoritarian governments, who will say they're going to move fast. They're going to move in the next 6 months. If the Democrats don't counter, if they just sit back and they're depressed, the donors don't want to give anything, you know what? They're going to win.
Well, you know what it says, a broken clock is right twice a day. We got somebody from Berkeley. That's right. No, I love Berkeley. I tell you something. One of the more beautiful campuses that exists is Cal Berkeley.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really, I like to make fun of Berkeley. Everybody loves to make fun of Berkeley. That's fine. I understand that. It's good fodder. But, boy, there's a lot to say for life in East Bay. And, boy, there's a lot to say for the University of California, Berkeley, and both in terms of a powerhouse academic institution and just a beautiful campus.
Well, let me just add this. It is a beautiful campus. It's had some great graduates, including our dear friend Maureen Orth. But the powerhouse academic performance has slipped. It has slipped because of the cuts that have been made to higher education in California and elsewhere. Still a great place, but it's struggling to be what it was.
My favorite story, we need to talk about this at one time, is everybody knew everybody was leaving California, except they wasn't. It's the second fastest growing state in the country in 2024.
What, in the world's sixth largest economy?
Yeah. I somehow or another, I think all the fretting over California is... I actually like California.
I'll tell you who gets that economically is my old colleague Matt Winkler at Bloomberg, who does.
He sure does.
He does deep dive data that shows you the great myth that California is.
You know how many? If you took patents per capita, shit, California might be number one in the world.
Right, James. We got one final question here, and that's from Nick in Billings, Montana.
Oh, okay.
Who says a recent poll said 42% of Democrats want Harris to be the 2028 candidate. Nick has a better idea. She should run for governor of California.
Well, there's two ways to look at that. You say 42 want to be, 58 don't.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that's... I'll just say this as respectfully as I can. I think she was dealt a pretty bad hand. For the most part, she played it better than adequately, but with a couple of glaring exceptions. I think she is a groundbreaking, admirable person. I think she's very honest. She's not going to be the Democratic nominee in 2028.
Right. She's not. She could be the Democratic nominee for governor in California. And that's not a bad place to go. But
look, I wish her nothing but the best.
Yeah,
I really do. But her future in national politics. Look, there's a lot of people who have future in national politics. I think the whole world of.
Yeah, no, I agree. Keep those questions coming in. If we didn't get to one this week, I promise we'll try to get to it next week. We love our listener questions. And we want to wish a happy Thanksgiving to you all. As disappointed as you may have been in some things, there's an awful lot to be thankful for in this country. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you check out the links to our sponsors, Laundry Sauce, Beam, and Naked Wines, and our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, you help make this podcast happen. To keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go and take a look. You can also find other shows you might enjoy in the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. And remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.